nation and all across the world, keeping us safe. We will then pledge the flag, and then we're going to have our choir sing the national anthem for us to start off our evening. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight for the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets that fled almost bursting in air gave room through the night that the flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here tonight. I'm Diane Douglas. I have the honor and privilege of serving as your State Superintendent of Public Instruction, and this is our listening tour. Joining me this evening is Bob Gold. He's one of our Associate Superintendents over the affected school areas. Bob, you have a word or two, please?
I just want to thank all of you for coming out. I know that this is a very busy time of the year, both for educators and for parents, and we just appreciate you taking time this evening to give us your thoughts.
Just very briefly, I won't take but a minute. I lost some of my notes. It is a listening tour, so the whole idea behind this is to have your feedback on the education of your children, your grandchildren, the schools that they serve. What I can't do personally is change the standards and that are in our schools now. That's the purview of our State Board of Education. But I certainly heard a lot while I was running for this position about concerns that people have. So that's what we're here. What I can do from that is then make recommendations to the State Board of Ed. I can make recommendations to the governor's office, and we can bring information to the legislature, and perhaps even help craft some statutes that will help make education better for all of our children. This is not about politics. This is not about campaigns, past, present, or future. This is about how we move forward here in Arizona. Just a few ground rules or housekeeping, if you will. If you'd like to speak this evening, you can fill out a card. You may have gotten one as you came in this evening, or if you need one, you can just raise a hand and we'll have someone from staff here to fill it in, or so you can fill it out, you can come up to speak. If you don't particularly want to speak, I believe we have forms in the audience. Yes, I'm getting a nod, yes. That you can just write your comments. We have a website available if you prefer to do it that way. You can pick up the phone, call AZ. Leave us a message. We want your input however you choose to provide it for us. We're not going to put a time limit per se on your comments. I don't want this to be like a school board meeting or a city council meeting where you get your 2 minutes and you better speak really fast and that's all you get. We really want you to be able to speak freely, but please recognize that there are a lot of people here, and we want everybody who wants to have the opportunity to give input to do so. So I have Mary down in the front. You know, when you hit that kind of 3, 4, 5 minute range, she may just stand up and remind you gently that there are other people. If we get to the point in the evening where everybody who wants to has spoken and we still have time left, if you'd like to come back up, at that point maybe we'll say a minute or two to just kind of finish up your thoughts. We'd be glad to have your input then. I think that's pretty much it. But we won't be responding. If you ask questions this evening, they're going to be deemed rhetorical questions, and we will just take your input. We will have a frequently asked questions going up on the ADE website, so things that can be very simply answered, we'll put that up right away and you can look for the responses to those. But then this is a 2-part tour. We're here tonight to listen to you. We will be back in this area of town in the fall, and then what we will do is tell you, these are the things we've heard from you. This is what we can do about it. Some of them, again, as I said, may go to the legislature in the form of bills or statutes that we'll try to get enacted. Some of it may be recommendations to the State Board of Ed. Some of the things I hope that we will hear is how can the department better serve parents, students, and your local schools. So we're looking forward to hearing some of that information too. So back out in the fall, but also I intend to make this an annual process so that we'll be here again next year. So you don't perhaps feel like, oh, rats, I didn't get that piece of information. I wish I'd said that. We want to have an ongoing process of hearing from you citizens. It's your education system. It belongs to you. We're here to serve you. So with that, I think we're ready to kick off the evening. And do we have someone come?
We're ready.
Thank you.
I'm Terry Train, and I'm here this evening to assist with facilitation. That means I read names and I make sure everyone that has turned in a card has the opportunity to speak. Right now we have about 18 cards that have been turned in so far. I'm going to pull the first 5 names so that you can position yourselves and get organized. Our microphone is right down here in the front, so feel free to start moving forward as I call your name. First name this evening, Fred Barlow. Second name, Francesca Thomas. Third name, Carolina Butler. Fourth name, Brownie Asali. Fifth name, Claudia Vickers. And if you will, repeat your name before you start speaking. That will help for the recordation process.
And you just identify if you're a parent, if you're a teacher, a community member, administrator, whatever, we appreciate that.
Good evening. My name is Fred Barlow. I've been an educator for over 40 years, serving as a classroom teacher for the first 15, and as an administrator since, for the last 11 years, being in charter schools here in Arizona. Ms. Douglas, even though you are not my candidate of choice, I commend you for implementing this listening tour throughout the state. My wish for the results of the tour is that not just listening will take place, but also assessment of what was learned and implementation of what is deemed worthy of improving the education of the children of Arizona will take place. My first and major concern in K-12 education in Arizona is the visible lack of adequate funding to provide a 21st century education for our students. When the legislature has cut funding to the point where districts are considering and some are implementing a 4-day school week, something is dramatically wrong. The draconian cuts in education funding by our legislature are very short-sighted, foolish, and are counterproductive to making Arizona economically competitive. Major corporations, by and large, do not come to states where they cannot find employees that possess the education necessary for their available positions. The education we give our children today, of Arizona today, is the economy of Arizona tomorrow. And quite frankly, at this time, the economic future of this state looks quite dismal. As superintendent of public instruction, I would expect nothing less than you to be a relentless advocate for public education, constantly lobbying for legislature for the funds necessary to provide top-notch education for our children. My second concern is with annual standardized testing. Let me state in this regard that I personally have no problem with the Common Core or developing other standards if that's deemed a benefit to do to replace the Common Core. I feel that standards are necessary for good education to be in place, but I'm not married to any specific set of standards. The problem, though, with annual standardized testing, which seems to be integrally related to setting standards, is that one test becomes the focus of the entire school year and forces schools to teach to the test. At worst, schools abandon, and at best, lessen the time spent on culture, music, art, PE, recess, field trips, etc. Things that have been proven to increase educational outcomes. Rather than improving educational outcomes, standardized testing has accomplished the very opposite. While at the same time, it demoralizes both teachers and students and has an even more devastating effect on many special education students. The fact that the only information schools and teachers receive after the students have completed the standardized test are the scores, rather than any useful information as to how students are doing, where their strengths are, where their weaknesses are, makes the use of them even more absurd. Is assessing student support important? Of course it is, but other ways that standardized tests must be considered. Things like data folios, project-based learning, students orally defending research that was done on just 3 of the numerous options that need to be explored. I want to state my last statement on this area is that Finland, the country that scores the very top internationally in all academic areas, gives standardized tests to students only once during their entire K-12 career. Lastly, I have concerns about alternative schools in Arizona. I currently do consulting work at BHM Alternative High School in Sacramento. BHM is located on the Gila River Indian community and serves about 60, 9th, and 12th grade students per year. The students are extremely high risk, with issues ranging from drug and alcohol abuse, incarceration, teen parents, etc. Basically, students who are otherwise extremely unlikely to graduate from high school. The student body changes rapidly, and admissions is like a revolving door. In spite of all of this, the school graduated 8 students last school year and is on track to graduate 11 students this school year. Pretty impressive. Problem? The school is being closed at the end of this school year because they received a grade D from ADE for the last 3 years. Part of the reason for the D grade is because, like all other schools in Arizona, alternative schools are judged on standardized test scores, which is extremely unfair based on the hard-nosed nature of their students and their constantly changing student body. And although some of the criteria that ADE sets is different for alternative schools, and that is actually very good, ones with a small, very small student body like BHM can have what looks like a statistically significant problem when it only involves 1 or 2 students. So something that normally would benefit an alternative school, judging works with this school in a negative fashion. Also, the last thing I can say is that out of all the 12 alternative schools in the state that are being closed at the end of the school year, 8 of them are on Indian reservations, which seems to me like a clear case of discrimination. I thank you for allowing me to speak.
My name is Francesca Thomas. I am a mom. I have 3 children who went to Scottsdale Unified School District School, and I don't know Mr. Barlow at all, but you can put my name down next to everything he just said. My 2 major concerns, and where I hope that you can help us, is in funding and with regard to assessments and how those assessments are used. With regard to funding, I think everybody in the room would agree, as I think having been in school for 15 years, I have watched progressive cuts in funding for our public traditional public schools, and the education that my last child is getting compared to what my first child got in terms of what's available in schools is drastically different. Just a couple of examples of that, and specifically where I hope you can help us is by being the chief advocate with our legislators. I think our legislators just don't know very much about what actually happens on the ground floor with the laws that they pass. And I'll give you a couple examples. We have a couple of our legislators, one who's currently sitting in the Senate right now, come and we gave them a presentation on school funding, what that looks like in Scottsdale Unified. One of the things we talk about is how special education is funded. In Scottsdale Unified, there's about 79% of our kids who have IEPs who fall into the lowest category of multiplier funding, if you will. Their multiplier is 0.008 for these kids. These are kids with ADD, ADHD, high functioning students who are in the classroom that need some assistance. That works out to about $12 per year additional funding for these students' specialized education. When we told that to our sitting senator, he said, that can't be true. And it was right off of your website, so you're like, no, that's true. These are the kinds of things that our legislators don't understand. They don't know how that translates down into the classroom. So I'm hoping that you can be the advocate and go to tell them the real stories of what's happening in our classroom. Another thing about how funding works. A few years ago, when we passed Proposition 301 to give our teachers more funding, which they rightfully deserve, one of the pieces that was in that citizen referendum was the sunsetting of excess utilities. We were locked into 1980s funding for utilities at our schools, and when, for a while, the state gave us more money, and then after we passed 301 in 2010, I think it was, it sunset, it went away. So now our schools are given the equivalent of what schools were given in 1980 to pay for the cost of utilities today. Clearly, utility costs have gone up, utility use has gone up, so where that money must come from, because the electricity companies, water companies don't wait for us to pay, is from our classrooms. That's how that translates into real life. And so I'm hoping you can be the person to go to the legislature and talk to them about that. In terms of assessment, I, like Mr. Barlow, have a problem with standards. I think standards are great. I think we measure what we value and we value what we measure. So I think it's important for us to know where our kids are, how we know where they are, what we do when we know too much, when we don't know enough. My problem is how we use those assessments. How we use one test to give a school a grade, when that grade, in fact, should be based on everything that's happening at that school. The quality of the certified teachers there, the quality of the community there, the extracurriculars that are offered to those students to build a whole person by the time they come out of school. I also disagree with how we use assessments to evaluate teachers. There's more to a teacher than the growth of an individual student or even a collective group of students in their classrooms. And it seems to me that we penalize the teachers most who have the hardest kids to teach. Kids who come hungry to school, kids who come sick to school, kids who are late to school because they have to take a city bus to get to school, which isn't always on time. We're penalizing those teachers instead of looking at the great work that they do with kids most at risk. We take one test, one day, and we say, that is the sum total of who you are as a teacher. So I would ask you to look very carefully at how we use our assessments, what are those assessment markers, especially with regard to what that means and it's translated into the value of the school and the value of a professional teacher. And I thank you two for coming out and listening, and for being an elected representative that actually comes out into the community. So thank you.
And just coming forward, if you do want to fill out a card, you can just wave it in the air and the team member will pick it up and make sure it gets out front. Go ahead, thank you.
One other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot in my housekeeping is a lot of times when you go to school board meetings or city councils, they'll say if someone else has already made to the point, please don't make it. Let us know if you agree or disagree, maybe make a new point about it. But we do want to hear whether it's one of you that agrees with that, or is it 5 of you, 10 of you. So don't be at all reluctant to that to say, I agree with the previous point. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Caroline Rutledge. I'm a longtime resident of Scottsdale. It is refreshing that an elected official conducts such an open tour to the citizens. Congratulations, Diane Douglas, on winning your election. Thank you very much. I am a lifelong Arizona.
Can you speak up a little bit? Yes, we're losing a little bit of your volume.
I'm a lifelong Arizona. My ancestors came to Arizona from Mexico 150 years ago, 1864. So now we have family living from Benson to Scottsdale. And today, Hispanics are 30% of Arizona's population. We are very patriotic people and have served in the military and in every war defending our country, the United States of America. Therefore, I want to congratulate you, Ms. Douglas, on not adopting the previous alarmist attitude on ethnic studies. It is important that education include studies in history and culture. Along those lines, there's one thing that I never understood. Arizona has a border with the country of Mexico. We are not at war, and I never understood as far as education goes, why every school in Arizona, our school, did not teach Spanish to the children. And by the same token, I never understood why the schools in Mexico, especially along the border, did not teach English in school. So we have this crisscross of people all the time down for many, many years. So my very first suggestion would be to offer you that idea for you to think it over, and it just makes sense to improve relationships between us, between Arizona and Mexico, between our peoples. People here in Arizona for years have already been taking lessons in Spanish, lectures, tapes, finding tapes, so forth and so on. And it would improve our trade, the economies of both Arizona and Mexico. So to me, it just seems like, a no-brainer. And I just, so I talked to a lot of Mexican people here in Arizona, probably some of them people, they don't know English. And yet they go to a job, and you've got to be able to understand English to do your job. And I know a lot of them are desperate trying to learn English, but a lot of them cannot afford the lessons. Anyway, I just have never understood why our two governments do not teach the other language. If we have friends next door to us, I would say, let's teach our children French so that we can get along better with our neighbors. So I would strongly urge you to like the idea to recommend to the governor and to the legislature, the state board of education, you'll be out of history as a person who's started this great idea in education. Along those lines, a few years ago, I held into a highly unusual situation. An elder from one of the nearby Indian reservations, a Yavapai elder living on the Portugal reservation, which is just about 30 minutes northeast of here, asked me to write the history of his tribe. Very unusual for a private person to ask a non-private person to write their history. But he was so determined, and he said that he wanted to have his history recorded of his tribe as they themselves view it, not as the white people had written it. So therefore, I thought with you that conversation years ago has developed into this book. oral history of the apple pie. And the first two comments that you will see on the very first page are from presidents of the Prescott apple pie and the Fort McDowell apple pie reservations. And both of them say the same thing. They wish that the people, the children, would be more educated on the history of the Indian people. So this is a very unusual book. It's fully documented, and I would like to donate a copy to you.
Hi, good evening. How are you? Good. My name is Romy Salary. I am the proud president of the Scottsdale Education Association. Yeah, Romy. And I'm also a proud teacher in the Scottsdale Unified School District. And when I say teacher, I am very, very passionate about that term because I'm not just a random Joe Schmo off the street that was a very good teacher. I'm somebody that worked really, really hard at school, worked really, really hard in college to even get into the program, and somebody who went through the journey, went through the teaching. My wife and I are both teachers, and we spend, it's interesting because when I'm done grading at 9:30 p.m., she's still grading history, so we're both done grading around midnight, which had to stop once we had a child. But sometimes I do feel like you could technically hire a Joe Schmo to do my job because it seems like my profession has been robbed. It's been completely taken away from me. And the main reason is the way that I am held accountable, which is through one test, one day, where you have 10-year-olds that are taking this test and vomiting because they're so stressed out. In fact, our test has instructions on it, thank goodness, that tell you how to behave and how to react when someone vomits during the test. Which, I mean, there's some comic to it, but as a teacher, it makes me really sad when we know we're setting our kids up to create this kind of pressure and this kind of tension, where we have to prep people in our profession of how to handle something like this to a 10-year-old. So it's very sad, it's very frustrating. And again, it really just takes it away from who I am as a professional. And to be honest, the person who puts the most accountability on myself is me. I'm the one that sits there with 180 kids and I think to myself, how can I do the best job for this kid? How can I do the best job for her? How can I do the best job for him? The guy who's driving into a Beamer to school, and the person who's taking a bus for 4 hours to school, in the same classroom, not much equity, but how do I make my job to make sure that I do the best for them? That is the accountability and the level of standard that I hold myself to, not this one test. So what I'm asking of you to advocate for us as our public education exam is to minimize the testing. So to paint the picture, what's going on right now in the month of May, you mentioned that it's a very busy time. But what we have is we have pre and post tests because there's state statute that says we have to measure teacher growth with this one test. But then we have IB testing because we have awesome schools that are just cranking out rock stars. We have AP testing going on, and then we have finals. The last month of school is literally tests. The number 2 pencil companies are just rocking out a profit because that's essentially what we're doing. But what we're doing is we're taking the learning away. So when I measure as a teacher whether my kid does well on a test when they're potentially sick or didn't eat breakfast, what doesn't count is how I measured when a student comes in and is bawling their eyes out because they got kicked out of their house, and I'm spending time to make sure that they feel confident enough to continue. How I'm not measured is by the number of dances and crowns and clubs and committees that I serve on, because I know that's really the quality of our work. Because that's really the important part of our profession, which is taking these students that come from all walks of life, and we do our best to level the playing field. And me getting hired or fired, paid or not paid, because of one test. It's crazy. I would never put my students in that situation because we know it's not right. So I'm asking that you please don't put your teachers in that situation because it's not right. I know there's committees being formed this fall to really start re-looking at all these things. And I'm challenging you to really look at the makeup of the committee. How many of the people that are on the committee are those with the boots on the ground, the grassroots efforts, the ones that actually are dealing with the decisions that are made from the top, and it trickles down to the impact that they have on students. Please revisit that and really be more inclusive, because those people's voices are the ones that are going to be directly impacted by teachers. And all I ask in future decisions is that you're really thinking about how do we honor the professionals. And I'm thinking a doctor, I know a teacher somehow does not equate anymore, even though it's just as important of a profession. How do we make sure that those people are still treated like professionals and their voices are still heard?
I want to give the next 5 names to allow people to gather. Lisa Hudson, Leslie Beauchamp, Samantha, I believe it's Melendez, Monica Herrera, and Jenny Brown will be the next 5. Go ahead, Clyde.
Okay, before you start, is it possible to dim the lights just a smidgen that you're trying on the stage? It's almost impossible for us to see those of you who are speaking, and I'd love to be able to see your faces a little more clearly.
Hi, my name is Claudia Rivas. I am a parent of a fourth grader, and I am a teacher in the district. All my concerns were already expressed by me and by Ms. Francesca Thomas. So I couldn't say it better than I could.
We have our next presenter, Lisa Hudson. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent. It's nice to be here. Thank you for coming. I just wanted to add something because I was very impressed with what the teacher over here said. I am not a teacher. I'm a lawyer. I am not a public school mom. I teach at a private school and a Christian school, but I feel all of the things. I truly, public education is so important to all of us, regardless of whether we have our kids in public school. You guys are the teachers here. You guys are the heart and soul of our community. I want you to know that. I taught 33 years in public schools, so I know exactly how hard you've done it, which is why I agree very much with them on the one assessment. You get one high stakes test through the year, so you better get those kids prepared. The problem with that is, as they said, you have one opportunity, and these teachers, I don't know if you know this, you are tagged like every student in the state with a unique identifier. So the state and the federal government will know when you submit an assignment, when they submit assessment scores, how they can perform with respect to that particular student, because that student has a unique identifier as well. And that information is all gathered, so they know what you're doing and how you're doing. And based on that, they're going to evaluate that one test. That student, as was said, they come to school hungry, they come to school dirty. I have a friend who's a school counselor, and she has kids who come, as a one child in particular, who comes to school with feces in his boots. And this kid is going to take the test, and these fine people are going to be judged on that. Now, I know that the assessments really aren't completely in your power. In fact, the federal government has much more power over this than we have ever seen before. But the legislation that's pending in Washington now that may pass, what Barack Obama wants is to continue high stakes testing, once a year, as they're currently doing now, for 3rd through 9th grade, 10th grade, and again, 3rd through 9th grade, 11th grade. So that probably is not going to go away. But the interesting thing that I think a lot of teachers haven't talked about, I haven't heard teachers talk about, is that based on these assessments and how these kids are doing and how they're being graded, that if you are a teacher, and you may be a fabulous teacher in a low-performing school, you are subject to losing your job, obviously. But if you're a high-performing teacher in what is considered a high-performing school, that teacher, under our waiver and our teacher equity plan, can be redistributed. That is teacher redistribution. That is contained in our waivers. We have a teacher equity plan. And you can be moved, whether you want to or not, from your high-performing school to a school that is considered low-performing. Now, I don't know that there's any empirical data that shows that a teacher who is successful in one school is also going to be successful in another school. I don't want to make this assumption, but kind of a generalization. If you take a teacher in, say, Kiva Elementary School, white, suburban, upper class, and you take that teacher, he or she may be very, very effective with kids who are coming from a higher socioeconomic background. But if you take that same teacher and move him or her into a low-income, predominant minority, probably in a poor neighborhood, who's to say that excellent teacher at Eva is going to be able to perform the same way in a low-income school? There's just no way to judge that. So the fact that teachers are tested, qualified, and evaluated based on that one test, the fact that they face potential redistribution, whether they want to go or not, I think is horrifying. And the fact that those waivers were recently reauthorized, I'm shocked by that. That anybody would agree to do that. So these good people who put their lives every single day into their heart, their classroom, into their students. And I just want to thank all of you for doing what you do. I really appreciate it. I hope all parents do, public, private, Christian, whatever. That's all you guys. Good evening, I'm Leslie Beecham. I'm a former principal and principal coach. And I really appreciate the time you're taking to hear from the public. I'm a freshman raised in Arizona, and I value our team's wildness, spirit, and independent streak. And I actually asked you to listen tonight with a little bit of that independent streak in mind, and use our voices as one take of input that you will think about making decisions. I could talk. I agree that you've been concerned about funding. I can talk about actually my positive experience with some of the TIP grants and systems of accountability and assessment that have really helped provide teachers who do have the tough classes, systems of accountability that support that and allow for us to really succeed to grow no matter what the circumstances. Could talk a little bit about my concerns about the SEI task force recommendations and the support for dualism. But instead of those, so I applaud those of you who spoke on that, I really like to talk a little bit about a story. And so it's short. Ms. Douglas, we recently visited Montville Elementary School, where I used to be principal, and helped award Monica Gutierrez one of the Milken Foundation awards of $25,000 for being an outstanding educator. And she is truly outstanding. She deserves her recognition. She continuously shows student growth. She helped her other educators learn and improve. And what's great about the Milken Award is that you can't apply for it. You can't nominate anybody for it. It is truly based on recognition of outstanding achievement. And so I want to keep that in mind. I want you to think about those who are truly deserving of recognition. I grew up pretty privileged. I was going to do okay at school, probably no matter what. But I noticed at a pretty early age that I was being given opportunities that other kids were not given. I was in a gifted class. I was smart and I worked hard, but I knew that only one or two kids in that class were truly gifted. And I had the opportunities that let me do well in school. But when I came back from the gifted class and went to the regular class, I would help my novice who missed quite a bit of school and he late to the year. And I helped him with his work. But I knew he caught on extremely quickly. He had a sense of humor. He made connections that I didn't make. He was really smarter than I was, and still struggled. And so when I think about that, I really knew there was something wrong. And so what I ask you and the Board of Education to consider is how we are supporting those smart, hardworking students who are dealing with less than perfect circumstances in their daily lives. There are students whose opportunity and future are truly school dependent. And there are teachers and systems and programs in schools that are making a difference to those students. And so we have the data. We know which teachers, like Anna, deserve that recognition, which schools, which systems, which teacher incentive programs are making that difference. And so what I ask is that you find out, that you look at the data, you use our input, really talk to the boots on the ground for those who are making that difference, those who deserve the recognition, and find out from them what is working for those at-risk populations. You're elected, you have access to all the data, and so I do appreciate you being able to listen to us, but I would like you to just use this voice as one piece and really take a look at the data. Look at those teachers who have shown what it takes to take kids that are school dependent and help them make it. Anna Gutierrez is one of those. She knows what could work for her as a student. She was one of the school dependent kids. What works for her as a teacher. And I know there are other incoming Annas in the schools right now. And I can't say that the funding that we have in schools right now is any less important than it was when she was in school. She's made a difference in the lives of so many students. And I think the students in school right now deserve that same funding and the same opportunity. So thank you for listening to me, but I urge you to act on the data of what's working best for those students who need the most support. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Samantha Melendez, and I'm currently a high school senior, but I also have the opportunity in a PTE class to go into a classroom as an educator at this young age. So I've been able to see education as a student, as an educator. In the past year, I served as the officer for Future Educators Association. So I really had the opportunity to see education inside and outside the classroom. Because of this opportunity, I was able to travel to Washington, D.C. just a few weeks ago and go and serve one of the top schools in our nation. So what I want to urge our state is to go and find those top schools, those schools that are excelling and using them as our role model. If we have to change our coming forward, we use that as our role model. Because going from our standing to our coming forward and then just going and coming forward was difficult for some students that had to change. To take those baby steps to make sure all of our students are excelling and we're not being left behind. Also, something to look at from those other states is their seat time. Virginia students' seat time is a lot greater than Arizona. And now because of Arizona's budget cuts, we're switching to 40 schools in some districts. So instead of following those other states, we're going against that. So that may be a sign that to improve our education, we have to follow those other states. Another issue we have in our state is a huge teacher shortage. We have over 95,000 people who are qualified to teach. We only have about 52,000 actually teaching. Most teachers, after their first 5 years of teaching, they leave the classroom because they find obstacles that decide, okay, teaching isn't for me. And a lot of those times, those teachers are the ones that are making the impact in the lives of students. So we really need to bring that into our education. If we look at locations, education is up there higher than ranked at the international level. We see that the teaching profession is valued as something that works. If you're an educator, you are up there just helping doctors and lawyers. We need to bring that passion for education, because that's going to go back to our students. A lot of students go into the classroom and they just think about their test. They don't think about what other amazing opportunities we have in our country. So really bringing that PTE program, I've had an opportunity to see that PTE programs are making an impact in education. So to continue to fund those PTE programs and give the students the opportunity to find a passion in high school. That way they figure out, okay, this career is for me, before investing all that into college. They know what's going to make them happy. What's going to put them in a career where they're passionate, happy, and successful, not a career that's just defined by a paycheck. Going back to the standardized testing, I would like to know if there's any accommodation made for those ELL students or those students with special needs. We know those students need special accommodations throughout the year when they're learning, but do they receive that as well through the test? We shouldn't be setting up those students to a test that we know they're not at the same level as their students. If they have the opportunity to excel, they shouldn't feel less. They don't have opportunity. If you have a student who doesn't speak English, they've been here for 6 months, and they're in a mid-grade classroom, and we just give them a test that all these students have been working for their whole life, they're at a huge disadvantage, and that's not fair. That student may excel in math and may be great at it, because they don't understand the language that sets them back and reduces their confidence and self-esteem, and that is not good. Also, touching back on funding, we fund more our visitors than our students. That is not right. If we fund more into education, we're going to have students who are educated, who go into careers, and less likely to fall into crime. So we'll be spending less on visitors if we put more money into education. So really going out there and working as a whole thing, even though you are our leader, we can't expect you to do everything. Give us opportunity to help you and work together as a team to make education better. Thank you.
Well, I thought I knew what I was going to say, but I don't now. I'm a Spanish teacher in Scottsdale Unified School District.
Please give us your name and come forward so we can hear everything that you're saying. Thank you.
Monica Pereira, Spanish teacher, Scottsdale Unified. I think the thing that scares me about it, I'm getting too many kids in my class at this age that are not prepared to be there, and we're passing kids on the way that they're not prepared to be there. Also, I wanted to address something that one of the women said, that she said, I have to go to schools next year because nobody has signed up to take Spanish classes. I have 34 in a class this year. It is very hard to get to these individualized needs when you've got that many in class. So those are my two big points. That, you know, we maybe should not pass kids on until they're prepared. And I don't know how you address that problem, send them to the school or whatever. That would be concerning ones. You know, let's have them take 8th grade even. We again pass the, even if they can't read, they're going to pass them out of 3rd grade. So I think we need to get our kids prepared. Maybe that's more of early childhood education. Instead of giving free education to community schools, let's give it to preschool and get them started in the right direction so we don't see inequality when they reach high school.
And as he is coming forward to the microphone, I will read the next series of names. Gabriel Rubin, Nicole George, Mia Rubio, Katie Haas, and Paul Benz.
Hi, my name is Kenny Brown, former Scottsdale Unified School District Governing Board dude, Eric, live right down the street. It's hard to be here and not talk about Common Core and mandated testing. President, in Scottsdale, we have a Galileo testing for benchmarking, so it also provides a grading post. Gives us an idea about what our little humans, are they ready for the big test that mandates a state test? We have AEs now, ACE and Merit, which is state mandated to give our students grades and district grades. This test also determines the $301 for a teacher. It's huge. Then, here's the scary thing. What wasn't talked about with AEs, ACE and Merit, whatever, the fact that it brings in almost $600 million to our state for federal funding. That's huge. Never was talked about opting out. Well, if 95% of our kids don't take the test, we don't get that $600 million for the test. And here we are in Arizona, that just hates funding education. Right. I got to point out that our superintendent, Dr. Felix, did not wake up one day and say, let's test. Our district is obeying the law. Teachers, kids, administration, parents. We're tired of being measured by the test. We are paid by the test. And no matter how well we do, the pay is going down. You know, we have a charter school in Scottsdale? Oh my gosh, it is called the best. Boy, you hear about it all the time. I won't mention it. It has a 35% graduation rate. Where only 35% of the kids that go there graduate. In Scottsdale Unified School District, who takes every kid that walks in the door, we have a 91% graduation rate. Why are the district public schools being punished? I think we're doing a good job. I think we're being accountable. Now we're hearing phrases like highly performing. Highly performing. Well, I'm proud of all of our schools in Scottsdale. It's hard to ignore, though. My chaparral was the top almost 100 high schools in the United States. But you know what else? How about Coronado? You know, Coronado has challenges. Coronado has challenges and still performs. And still has a better graduation rate than that charter school I was talking about. And you know what? It has a better rate. Absolutely brilliant schools in Scottsdale that you would expect to do well. But you know what? Right down the street where I live, I have 2 Title I schools. I have Pima, nationally recognized blue ribbon school. Very diverse. I have Hoboken Traditional School, where my kids went. You know what? It's even more diverse, and it was an A 1 year and just missed A the next year. Those schools I call highly performing. Where you can take a challenge and perform, that's highly performing. I think they need recognition. I am tired of the elitist, hypocritical attitude of our state toward our public schools. You know, it wasn't that long ago, as Francesca mentioned, that the state used to help us with building maintenance. Not anymore. That money comes out of the classroom. Wasn't that long ago, the state used to help us with utilities. My utilities aren't going down. I know the districts are. No help now. That money comes out of the classroom. You know, last time I looked at a budget, it's been about a year or so. Special ed, $1 million off their budget. They saved $1 million off their budget. Wow, that's huge. That meant that Scottsdale Unified School District was only on the hook for $11 million of mandated services by the state. $11 million gone because the state didn't fund. We need to address this. You know, public education serves the everyman. Publicly funded schools should never be allowed to sort or cherry pick students. We have a moral obligation to every student that comes to the doors to help them be their best. Our students deserve funding, not political pandering. Thank you.
We have 19 additional speakers, and we're just coming to the close of our first hour together. So we offer that so that we can all judge timing. Thank you.
I would like to encourage the superintendent to use, not hearing me. Pardon?
State your name, please, and speak a little, step a little closer to the microphone, please.
I'm Gabriel Rubin. I would like to encourage the superintendent to use her time in office to change education, to provide the leadership to make us a real profession, to use the model that we have for attorneys, when they run their own profession, and the medical unit, which runs its own profession. And I would also suggest that that change ought to be in the direction of the medical profession, and that we should be teaching children and adults on an individual basis. Testing should be used for diagnostic purposes, not to reward or punish. And testing should be done before, rather than just after. This can be done, but we can make some huge changes. We're going to have to be regarded as a profession. We use the term, but we are not. We are run by lay people. Educators need to make decisions.
George is next speaker. Thank you. Hello, I'm George. So I come from the Scottsdale School District. I have a great experience. And right now I work for a capital test prep, so I work with counselors and teachers throughout Arizona and New Mexico. And just anecdotally in the last year, what I've seen is that we're losing good teachers who are retiring early because their schools are underfunded. And I've seen teachers who are married to each other, two teachers with master's degrees who can barely afford to raise their family. And I've seen teachers who just work so hard for their kids, especially at lower income schools. And it just seems like kind of kicking them in the face that some of their pay has been frozen for like 3 years or 4 years. And I'm so nervous I didn't write anything down. I feel like if we keep underfunding our schools, two things are going to happen. One is that we're going to lose our experienced, dedicated teachers because they're going to burn out for doing all this extra work. Their classrooms of 35, 40, 45 kids. And the other thing that's going to happen is this brain drain is going to continue where the kids that are gifted or the kids that are privileged have parents who can get involved are going to flee and continue to flee the charter school and private schools. And as a country, we decided to fund public education so that everybody has an equal chance. And I feel like the more our schools segregate and public schools are where kids who don't have any other options go, then the less we are accomplishing that feat of giving everyone an equal chance. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Mary Rubio. I'm a freshman at American High School, and I'm here today because I'm concerned that standardized testing students have too many times what to do, too many hours of what the actual learning, and are facing testing and testing, making money for the testing companies and frustrating teachers to the point of leaving. This emphasis on testing has led to my mother saying one day, "Why are you still doing homework, testing and food?" It's frustrating as a student, the valuable class time is being used to take tests. If you want to know what the students are doing, ask the teacher. If you want to know how the teachers are doing, ask those students. And I'd like to challenge you to bring your listening for the classroom and hear what students have to say. Thank you.
Hi, and it's Katie Bates. I'm going to start spelling it from now. Superintendent Douglas, constituents, my name is Katie Bates, and I'm a 10-year educator with experience in 2 different community public schools. And I'm a newly elected member of the Osborne Government School Board. We recently visited one of our Osborne elementary schools just previously, and honored one of our educators for working with the College Foundation. Thank you for being part of that. As you traveled and listened, I'm sure you've heard the anger, fear, and confusion about the education system. I'm here as well, in confusion, anger, and fear. I share your disdain for federal policymakers who write education policy without any educators in the room, touting accountability and consequences for our children and public servants, while corporations and lobbyists tip the scales for profit. As educators, our children and as educators during the first few years, of fear-based government oversight, I and other educators misplaced our anger and fought our administrations over testing practices that we knew would tear apart the very fabric of our profession. When a child asks, why do I need to know this? And the resounding answer is, it's on the test. Yeah. Rather than, it's important because it's culturally or community relevant, all of our work is undermined by oversight. It changed the focus of our profession and the conversation in a way of meeting human needs through counseling, conflict resolution, and the purpose of unstructured play and development. Where is the conversation about equity, about cultural competency, about the effects of poverty on children, the need for the arts in our schools, the negative effects of stress, and the deprofessionalization of the teaching profession? Teaching and learning are fluid. As I teach, I learn, and as my students learn, they teach me. And I know this because my first year teaching, a first grader named Esperanza came to me and she needed to learn how to count. She had come to our school from multiple other schools before us with limited vocabulary and missing the foundation of symbolic number sense. She didn't know what 1 or 2 or 3 even were, let alone what order to put them in. I tutored her after school during the 21st Century Funding Program, and I grew more nervous from the minute about failing this child as I witnessed her deficiencies and felt my own frustrations. And just when I thought I couldn't do it, that I had to give up, Esperanza stopped me. And with the optimism of a child, she said, in this case, this is the face of someone getting smart. And through careful attention and time, she did. She learned to count, she developed, and she grew, and she taught me about resilience. I moved districts after my 5th year of teaching from Creighton to Roosevelt, and found myself in an understaffed, neglected building. I teach the entire school music and am expected to raise funds for my program in a community where 95% of our students live in poverty. And if an override doesn't pass, we will surely close schools. My students come with a multitude of issues I never faced as a middle-class American. And because I've taken up the calling to teach, I listen, I connect, I inspire, I plan, I assess, and I chart their growth. And when my 2nd graders showed 89% growth and fluency on their benchmarks in reading, we celebrated together. When Alex, my 8th grader, who I tutored in guitar after school, told me that guitar saved his life because he chose music over delinquency, I was speechless. And when I realized that if I wanted to be a part of a larger solution, I had to act. I started participating in democracy, and I ran for my school governing board because I realized that as vast as our flaws and failures in education are, a teacher's positive influence on one child at a time is a deeper connection that needs representation. When I took office on the Osborne governing board, I took my oath to do right by the children of Osborne. And I had to set aside all of my preconceived notions about who was to blame for problems in education. Because in Osborne, things are different. Every school has a full-time counselor and full-time behavior teacher funded by the federal grant. We take care of our kids, and we trust our teachers as a collective and demonstrate it through our policy of support and conversations around accountability that are more about reflection in individual needs of students rather than testing capabilities. Osborne honors what makes schools fun, that students' developmental, mental, and emotional health is a priority over their achievement. And sure enough, when you honor the child's nature, this is what one of the principals told me, their achievements soar. But as an educator, I see kids struggle because we live in a state where the majority of state leaders do not value or take care of our young and show up by passing unprecedented cuts to education and speak lies that our community schools are wasteful,
We are the ones that educate with 11% less in administrative costs than our corporate charter counterparts. These decisions and the untrue rhetoric of failing schools tears at the complex webs of the relationships that makes education strong. When we lay off another bus driver, another custodian, another librarian that is still in a child's life. And when I see every district, every community of its own struggle because a few would choose to subsidize private education with public taxpayer dollars, something is dangerously wrong in our state, and it's not our students. Education means different things to different people at different times. Today has gifted us with the opportunity for our education system to lead us in unprecedented directions. We have to adapt, but becoming contemporary should not be an excuse for chaos or shortcuts and privatization. And now that you've listened, I ask that with the same cunning and ferociousness that you fought against Common Core and won your office, when they come for us, that you stand for the communities and democratically governed schools that your office historically is charged to lead. You have done more in 5 months for the 86% of children that use our community public schools than the past superintendent ever did. We need you to be our champion for democracy so that we can teach our children through voice, action, and institution that at our most local level of democracy, we are listening and standing by their best interests so they may have the opportunity to choose their path to prosperity in our community. Thank you.
And as he's approaching, our next group will include Todd Schwartz, Edward Manning, Kirk Kinsey, Timothy Schul, and Ariana Gallo.
Good evening. My name is Paul Dent. I'm a student in the Paradise Valley School District, and I just have a few comments on Common Core. Recently, there was a bill that's House, Senate, House Bill 2190, repealed Common Core. I'm legislative district number 15. I voiced my name in opposition to my senator, who is Nancy Barrio and John Allen, asking the logic of taking a standard that has been developed over 5 years in common, actually has a common denominator with other states, and throw it out the window and start all over again with a brand new standard. And it's unknown who was going to develop the standards and who's going to approve the standards. So, and I know Ms. Douglas, that you would have voiced your opposition to Common Core, and I actually cruised your website here, and I couldn't find a mission statement on your website. Since you're against the standard that is developed between a group of states, and you don't live in an island, we have to have commonality across the country in some form or another. And a bonus is we get some federal funding out of it, which I think is a good thing. But my question to you is, what is your mission statement? What do you do? What do you think these standards should be? So, and in closing, I just looked at your biography. You say you have a degree from Rutgers University. I'll follow the email. It's not clear what that degree is. You're a financial expert for various private firms. Which firms are those? And how does that experience relate to education? Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Douglas. I want to thank you. My name is John Schwartz. I'm a member of the Bolts Elementary School Governing Board and a graduate of Fort High School. The Bolts School District was the first district in the state to go to a 200-day school year. We received a little bit of extra money for that, but since the cuts over the last 5 years, they've totally eroded that and left us with no ability to increase teacher pay. 80% of the households in our district are below the poverty line. 97% of our students are below the poverty line. We have a huge challenge. Our kids come to our flood schools, not only speaking English and Spanish, but also Somali, Sudanese, and many other African dialects. As a school board member, I want to encourage you to step back from the rhetoric against government. We can't be changing standards and curriculum every year and expect our students to thrive. Our students need to compete nationally, internationally, and they need consistency. Get back briefly to subject to teacher pay. If we don't start paying teachers in Arizona, we're going to lose good teachers to California, New Mexico, and Colorado. And just, I know people like to think that we have a funding problem. We do have a funding problem because the state legislature refuses to fund education. It shouldn't be a partisan issue. It seems to be. When I was in Cornell, the strongest advocate in the state for public education was David Pratt, whose kids also went to high school. The equalization funding that Senator Pratt helped bring about has pretty much disappeared, as wealthier districts are able to take much better advantage of school tax credits in districts like Falls. And just as an aside, I know we had an uptick in Arizona's economy last month, which many economists have attributed to falling gas prices. Now, since falling gas prices don't all go to the rich, like the tax cuts in the past, I think it offers some evidence that by putting money in the pockets of working people, by investing in schools, we're going to turn this economy around. By continuing to cut education, continuing to cut wages, will only leave us worse off. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Edward Diane. I'm here in Scottsdale School District, Cornell School as well. I just want to make a few quick comments. Over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of nice working on overriding things in this district, trying to get that passed, and trying to improve funding for schools in general, in the state, and as superintendent, you should say. When I was a student here, funding was $55 per $1,000 tax dollars. Now it's down to $35 per $1,000, and I think that's sad. And I believe that Common Core has only been implemented in the state for 5 years. 2010 when it was passed, I believe that standard, if you want to have students, you have to give them time to work. So you have to let them play out. You have to get the teachers who have been spending their time, who have been spending state dollars, to get them trained to use those standards. We need to give them the time and the standard the time to see how well they work. And if we just take them out and get rid of them right away, then we don't know what we will replace with. That's a problem. That's all I can say. And I also agree with Money and Francesca, all those things. Thanks.
Thank you. Coming up, and just to alert you to time, we have 9 cards beyond the current group. Go ahead, Kurt.
Kurt Kinsey, Superintendent Douglas, thank you for coming out. I'm a 29-year veteran. I'm a little cynical though. I've been fighting this fight ever since I graduated college. There has always been a teacher shortage, a quality teacher shortage. Yes, we can fill the classrooms. We are doing alternative certification that if you have a college degree, go teach. We'll give you 6 weeks to train you. You can be a teacher. I work with those people. They're not successful. They're disciplined, disciplinedness. In rewarding teachers, I know there are some. The Milliken Foundation, I don't know what the criteria are, but I've worked with some Rodale teachers. who I was impressed at. Oh, we have a real teacher coming into work. She's going to show some amazing things. Again, she lacked discipline. She got test scores up somehow, but it all came out to test, but she didn't teach the whole child. I had many of the students not succeed in her class because she never built a rapport with them. She never disciplined properly, and yet she was rewarded and held up as an exemplary teacher. I feel like I've lost that. We keep hearing we need to run schools like a business. We can't. I cannot take my most challenging class this year of 8th graders and fire them. No matter what I do, no matter how hard I try, they're just not worth it. They enjoy being in class with me, they enjoy what we're doing, but they're just not following through with writing the essay. We cannot run schools like businesses. We need to stop using that analogy. If we could, I would be fighting for a higher salary. And I would go in with my 29 years of experience and say, I am a mentor. I have guided new teachers. Many of them are very successful and have paid me for what I helped them with. I was a career ladder coach. I helped veteran teachers become better teachers. And again, our state of infinite wisdom has cut the career ladder program. I personally have lost over $10,000 because of that each year. That affects my retirement as well. So I'm one of those people that is being pushed out of a profession that I'm still passionate about because the way the retirement system works, it's your highest 3 years from the last 10. My highest earning years have passed because the state continues to cut. The Career Ladder program is a proven program that increased student achievement. It made me a better teacher. It made my colleagues better professionals. But yet, our state cut it. You have the ability of the bullet pulpit. You are our superintendent of public instruction. Public instruction. Not siphoning money off to the private schools. Not doing vouchers for the private schools who have no accountability to the public. Speaking of some of the charter schools, not all, but some of the charter schools do not play by the same rules that I have to play. My challenging class this year is an inclusion class. I probably have 7 children who are on IEPs. Some of them can succeed in a general ed classroom, some of them cannot. So I urge you to listen. And not only listen, but use the bullet pulpit of your position and take it to the legislature. I know many of them will not listen because they have their own agenda. The data, if you look at the data, if we compare, and I saw this data, you can find data the same thing, but if you look at our top 75% socioeconomically of American students, and you compare them to the rest of the world, we're in the top 3. You look at us compared to the rest of the world, we have 25% of our children living in poverty. Arizona is one of the worst states. So yes, our test scores are brought down that much by our children. I love those children that are living in poverty that have to struggle, face these challenges, and I'm willing to do the extra work. But don't judge me because we're not providing the background they need. You keep labeling some of my schools a failing school, I will show you a failing school. Thank you for your time and best of luck.
My name is Timothy Schlong. I'm a senior at Fountainwoods High School. I have a concern regarding the disproportionate enrollment numbers from public high school to public high school across our state. An example detailing this concern would be a public school like Pinnacle High School having over 2,600 students enrolled, but Fountainwoods High School having only about 600 students. In a system where the state funds these public schools based on enrollment numbers, I see this as a problem. I see some small schools like Fountainwoods High School disintegrating, being absorbed by larger districts like Scottsdale because of how our school system works. Our school has had to pass overrides just to stay afloat. This example seems like our public education system is being treated more as a business rather than an investment towards our students. Like a woman said before me, teachers have to move schools because there just simply isn't enough students for him or her to teach. I would suggest that we try to balance the enrollment and balance funding statewide. I think we should consider restructuring high school districts to allow more evenly numbered students per high school district for efficiency and equality. Thank you for listening to this all.
Our mom is the next speaker, and as she's approaching, we have 10 in the audience left that would like to speak. We're heading toward 5 minutes to 7. That gives us about 35 minutes left. Our next grouping is going to include Marsha Wilbur, Kira Homestead, Florence Smith, Julie Sanowski, and Mark Jeremiah. Go ahead.
My name is Arna. I just want to say, I can look at I had a couple of emails, teachers telling me, pretend you're a parent. She'll listen to you more. But, you know, I was debating it. I wrote my practical notes today. It didn't mind, but I think I'm going to go true. I am a first-year teacher. One thing that I want to talk about is the profession. It's not always seen as a profession, and this is something that I hope to change. I've gone through training for year 3, as well as a master's, and student teaching thereafter. And when in my training, in my master's degree, I was so excited because I was studying at a time. Common Core was just passed, and the next generation science standards were just accepted by Arizona. So yes, I am the new way. But I did not understand the controversy. These are great standards. Just very, you know, clearly written by educators. They read, you know, I think there's a lot of backlash from people that haven't read it. They're great standards. I think the controversy that I've understood more tonight even comes with the testing. It's taking so much time away from the classroom. So if we could have a way to measure the standards differently with tests, I think there is something there. They are good standards. Maybe just the testing approach that differently. One thing I did before I did my master's degree was I worked at an alternative high school, which I've been brought up a couple of times tonight. And it seemed like a degree mill to me. It wasn't meeting the students where they were at. And it was a charter school, and I think I saw the dark side of charter schools with that. I wanted to get out. I went for my master's. I came back. I'm here at a public school now. I teach at Coronado, and I have seen very intrinsically motivated students here with the robotics club, the marching band, soccer, the athlete program, just to name a few of the great programs we have here. Intrinsically motivated students and incredibly committed teachers. So I think there is value to public education that I hope you can represent to our governor as well as to the state. And with that being said, there are students that are falling through the cracks. And we need to bring back vocational training and CTE, as the student mentioned, just so that those students that maybe aren't college bound can, you know, find their path as well. So that's something that we've talked about in my department. We need that. We need vocational training in the public schools for our students. Okay, thank you.
Everyone, my name is Marsha Wilbur. This is way too long. First, I want to thank this opportunity, and I commend you for the courage and effort in this job. Be at home behind some blog post doing something else rather than reading with us and interacting. I'm a parent of several children in this district. My other children also attend this district. I've also worked for companies like Pearson and Evans, and most recently as a consultant at the Department of Education, where I was hired to implement a statewide solution for the learning management system. We tried to level the playing field with that system. We really did. We wanted open and free access to information for every child in the state. We met with people in the Native American community who had schools closed, students that were taking 4x4 buses to another location in order to get their education every day. I'm also the president of one of the local Linux user groups, and have been an advocate of free speech, open source, free software. One of the things that really concerned me was that when I went in, there was a Moodle system, which is free software, and it's gratis, as in, it doesn't cost anything. Yet over 5 years' time, this system has cost the Department of Education $19 million. I did the math on this, and I thought, you know, if every student got a netbook with that money, that would amount to 90,000 netbooks for students in the state. So I understand pretty clearly this interruption. But there are a few things that might need to be changed, cleaned up, things that I noticed. There are a lot of good people working at the Department of Education. A lot of people who put their heart and soul into the projects and for these children. And those people are to be commended. And I hope that you will identify those people and continue moving forward with the Department of Education internally to make for a better education for the children in the state. Another thing I wanted to discuss was technology in the classroom. I think it's really important, especially in today's day and age. And I think that one of the things we can do is look at what other states are doing. We do have an auditor general who can go in and take a look around, observe the Department of Education, compare against other states, and give a report on any recommendations. Maybe, you know, I don't know how that works with reaching out to the auditor general, but that might be something to consider. The last thing I wanted to discuss is there's, at least when I was there, no internal training department in the Department of Education. And I found this to be somewhat odd, considering education programs. So there is an outreach unit for ALS, which is a legislature to gather data on students, and basically $7 million last year, developing software to gather information on students. But there's training there. There are 4 trainers and a training manager for that. But as far as internally, there really isn't. And when I was developing the FERPA training for the agency, it came to my attention that even your data officer and your chief privacy officer had not passed any US DOE FERPA training, and I have to. But there are just some improvements that I think can be made, and that might trickle down into the schools, you know, as far as like the funding issue. If we spend less money internally, maybe we can offer those funds to schools somehow. And again, I want to thank you for coming out and having the courage to interact with us all. It really does send a great message that we believe in free speech and getting feedback from us all. Thank you.
For this evening. Again, we're right at the 7 o'clock mark, so we have 30 minutes. I will read this home. Thank you.
I'm Karen Johnson. I spent 12 years in elementary school doing Wales teaching, and I spent 6 years in higher ed teaching teachers at ASU for the last 6 years. I am hungry for a culture of learning, and I am hungry for a vision of education that reaches all children. I'm an advocate of public education. The Common Core standards or college employment standards, I believe, are excellent, and I believe I'm grateful to the collective group who organized and put those together for us. the more the better, the more the merrier, in order to help our children learn. Many people don't understand that the way these are presented, helping students be critical thinkers. That is how all of this information is presented. So students are learning to think critically through the way that these are presented. That's what we want. We want our students to be able to be not just memorize things. We can look up anything on our smartphone and you have it in 5 seconds. So what we want students to do is evaluate, synthesize, learn how to back up their arguments. I don't care what subject that we're talking about. And then a future for Arizona, a future where we want families to come because they can't stay away because our education system is amazing, or businesses want to come. That Arizona, to me, every student is bilingual. Our brains are wired. You only know one language, you're doing your brain a disservice. We have mathematics taught. You are not memorizing formulas, but you are learning how to problem solve and how to solve the problem in programming ways. We have Arizona where every student, I don't care who you are, where you come from, every student has dignity and is valued and has the opportunities to succeed. And that's the kind of Arizona I want to live in, and I want to see our vision maybe come from the top down, because we'll never have enough money, we'll never raise enough funds, we'll never have them. But maybe if we have a culture of learning, we have some way to get people to realize education is where every student wants to come to school every single day to do incredible project-based learning, doing incredible things. We never know more about how the brain learns and about what is happening in the brain. We've never known more than we do right now. And why are we using that to help our students learn as much as they can and to excite educators who are doing incredible job? But we need a culture of learning. We need to show what we have. Thank you for your time.
And because our time limit is coming upon us, I'll wait at you at about 3 minutes, and you can make a choice. If you haven't covered something that you think is really important, be sure to do that. And again, we want to try to allow as many as have submitted cards to be able to speak. So go ahead.
My name is Florence Smith. As a kindergarten grade reading teacher, I see the Common Core standards as a high set of standards. During your campaign, you gave much misinformation on the Common Core standards, saying students would be less eligible, that the United Nations was behind these standards, that the standards were indoctrination, and that the data collection system, quote, will follow individuals through school and to and through their work life. Although you could not give one example of where the state of collection was taking place. All this, along with the other misinformation that you disseminated around our state, instilled fear in many parents and has made the job of many teachers much harder, having to counter all the fear-mongering that you and other people have done in regards to the grade standards. You may have sincerely believed these things as a candidate. Articles such as Controlling Education from the Top by Julie Robbins and Emmett McGroarty spread much misinformation. But I do not see how you can still hold to such falsehoods. I would respectfully submit that I feel that one of your acts as Superintendent of Public Instruction should be correcting the misperceptions about Common Core standards that you have left with many parents.
Hi, I'm Julie Sadowski, and I am not only a veteran teacher in Scottsdale schools, but I'm also a parent of 2 children in schools. And there's been a lot of talk this evening about choice. And I just want to say that I'm all about choice, but I choose district public education. I choose that because that has been set up as a great equalizer in our society. And I strongly believe that when people who have spoken tonight talk about the battles they face, the challenges they have, they're also supporting that idea that every child should have opportunity in their life to better themselves and to better their place in this world. A couple comments I wanted to make tonight. First is that over 80% Our families in the state of Arizona also support my choice, and that's public district education. But I think we have some issues. One that was brought up this evening was Spanish language learning. My son, who is graduating from Desert Mountain High School this year, he's been a very successful student in the school system. One thing he looked at me and he said, "Mom, why didn't I learn Spanish earlier?" Because his first opportunity to take real Spanish class was in 8th grade, and it really wasn't the equivalent of the rigor of a high school class. So that was a big challenge for him. He said, "Why didn't I take it when I was a baby?" And I just kind of laughed because my husband and I did put our kids in Spanish classes when they were little, and they resisted and they didn't like it, so we kind of stopped. But there's nothing that can beat having language every single day and that expectation. I grew up in Minnesota. When we came in from recess, we had Frau Oaklish on our TV sets teaching us German. I don't know what we were going to do with speaking German. Here it just makes sense that kids learn at a young age and have a routine of learning that language. I also heard a lot about students whose needs are being challenged in our typical settings. We don't get to pick who we have in our classrooms. We are left to deal with all children, regardless of their background, regardless of their interests. We are trying to fit them into a one-size-fits-all mentality, and that is not right. We need to think of vocational training, but I know you have some challenges. If you're listening tonight, I hope you are. There's been the same voice of many faces. 60% of teachers who enter our profession leave within the first 5 years. That's a problem. If you look at a point of view of testing from a middle school student, you start off the school year, they have 6 classes, they take 6 hours of pre-tests for the courses. They have benchmarks at 2 different times throughout the year. They have state tests, which interrupted our school schedule for 3 weeks because I'm at a middle school. And then they have the post-tests. This time of toxic testing is taking away from precious learning and teaching time. So I leave you with this rhetorical question. I don't expect you to answer now, maybe through your actions. What is your plan to change the atmosphere in our state and start fighting for decent and appropriate funding for district public education? Thank you for your time.
I'm Mark Jervis, and I agree with Diane on one side of it all. And this rule makes me feel uneasy because we got A. If you really think about it, we have they over here too, because they elected they, and that's just the way it is. I pretty much agree with everybody's analysis here of the problem that we're facing at the moment, but I think our focus is a little bit too small. We're all in a consensus reality here. Let me explain that in terms. It's what they've taught us and what we teach ourselves, all of our parents. I don't know why I brought this to myself. It's innate. It's what we've been taught. And our children have taught their children, and so on and so forth. So that may be on there. Anyway, let's go back to I want to address the lady with the democracy. That's our problem, is we are not a democracy, and by not acknowledging that we are a representative government, we are letting the democracy overrule us. Democracy, if you really, really study
subject is the last step to total tyranny. I do have a website called More Than You Want to Learn, and there's just huge amounts of information about stuff like that. I want to get into the bit where the administration of our schools is just overwhelming. The best example of this is when I went to the doctor back in Canby, Minnesota. There was one doctor and 3 helpers, a nurse, and a couple of people. Now I've had an eye problem. I've been going to an eye doctor around here. I got to be friends because I have a 20-year history with them. So I'm friends with the employee. They have 200 people per doctor at this clinic. Is that happening in our schools? We've gone way past this mark. One of the points I'd like to really emphasize is the child abuse. We are starting the kids learn in kindergarten. We expect them to move on. And there's a new program. Oh, I have 20 pages of education stuff, the latest, greatest information. There's a new program introduced at the federal level that wants to start with your 3 to 5-year-olds. And that's child abuse. The whole objective of it is, if you really think about it, or what they're doing is actually inhibiting our kids from learning. Because they so traumatize our kids with fear. And all this stuff, in fact, there have been many lawsuits across the country now with teachers actually going to jail for accepting bribes and stuff and trying to tell the kids what's going on. And who is behind Common Core? It actually isn't our government. There have been people that have taken over. It's the GP, Washington, D.C., and their chief rep, and it was written by the American Principles for the American Principles Project. And so it's, you know. Thank you very much.
I'm going to read the additional names of the cards that we have received. And I'll ask that everyone go ahead and gather, and then we'll try to use some time in a way that makes the most sense. It's about 7:14. The final names are John Kane, Carl Mangold, Bonnie Sneed, Eric Francis, Sarah Spear, and Katie Hobbs. And if you can gather and collectively share that last 15 minutes, and be sure to give your name so that we have that. Thank you.
Superintendent Douglas, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is John Kane. I'm the Instructional Technology Coordinator for Phoenix Elementary School District. And tonight I'm speaking only for myself and on behalf of the district. I'd like to make some brief comments about the online AC merit test and the AC merit exam. Over the past few months, I have become intimately familiar with the online AC merit, but I believe with enough therapy and medication, I will control recovery. I can give you at least a dozen examples of what's wrong with the AC merit, but I'll stick to one. In order for a student to see test item 1, the student and the test administrator, i.e. teacher, must complete 41 independent steps. I define a step as a mouse click to type in text. 41 steps to get
test item 1. I had 2 adult children, an investment manager, and a technology, and a business technology consultant. If they were in elementary school today, I would not let them anywhere near the online Asian American. Regarding the Asian American test in general, this is just one more high-stakes test where in most cases, all of the stakeholders are giving the test, and none of the stakeholders is taking it. Why would we expect to get meaningful results with a test that is meaningless to most of the test takers? I know we have at least one point here tonight, maybe more. May God have mercy on their soul. But let's say you just graduated from law school and you're about to take the bar exam. However, your score on the bar exam will have no bearing on your admission to the bar. Instead, your score will be used as a quote-unquote snapshot of your learning, and it will also be used to evaluate your professors in your law school. You would find this to be insane. But in K-12 education, that is standard operating procedure. Thank you for listening and have a good evening.
Good evening. My name is Carl Manfold. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Arizona, and I have worked in several school districts with children who are at risk. I have worked with children who have their last meal of the week at lunch on Friday, and their first meal of the next week is Monday in school for breakfast. I have worked with homeless children who are couch surfing, children from homes with violence, children in poverty, special education children, and children who grew up in wealthy families that are highly dysfunctional. Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells us that nobody will be ready for learning or higher steps within the field unless their basic needs are met. As a school social worker funded in the public education realm, I have had the opportunity to watch students learn once their needs have been met. And I would encourage the Department of Education to take a serious look at funding counselors and social workers in this field so that these wonderful teachers and school districts can do the work that they are meant to do.
Hi, my name is Sarah Steer. I'm a parent of 3 children, first grade, 6th grade, and 8th grade. I'm also the governing board president in Madison Elementary School District. I'm not a teacher, however my family is, however. So I do listen to them. I come from the business world. My request to you is to stay the course on Arizona College of Career Ready standards. Our district implemented them 4 years ago. As a result of having such a widespread of children in my home, I see the difference in my first grader, in what he's learning, how he's learning, his critical thinking skills, his research skills. It's impressive and it matters. And I just wanted to respectfully submit that we stay the course and end any continued discussion about the merits of Arizona College of Career Ready standards. Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent. My name is Eric Francis. I'm an educator, I'm a parent, voter, citizen of Arizona. You know, right now, I just want to give a highlight with you, just have a conversation. I want to say welcome to education. This is not politics, this is education. And I want to stress to you, you are not a politician, you're an education leader. And in education, we don't do Republican, we don't do Democrat, we don't do Tea Party, we don't do Liberal. We do what's in the best interest of kids. And we do what we do based upon the children in our classroom. What's in the best interest of kids? If the best interest is to go to district school, then that's great, that child benefits. Best interest is to go to charter school. That's great, the child benefits. Please, as you make every decision in your position, think, what's in the best interest of kids? Forget about all the politics, forget about all the malarkey, forget about the conspiracy, forget about all this. Look at the children and say, is that the best interest of kids? The other thing I worry is I'm a former Department of Education employee. I work there under Tom Moore. I work there at John Group Law. You guys are great people working for you. You guys are great leaders down there. There's been a lot of healing also because a lot of things have happened. There are people who came in with a fist, and they went out there with a fist. They damaged some relationships. And you have leaders also getting there with strength and healed a lot of relationships. Listen to the head of your department. They are good people, and they're going to make you look good. Finally, the thing I advise you to do, because I have been a teacher, have worked in the Department of Ed, and now I'm a professional development. Yeah, I prioritize what I do in education because I can my professional development. And I try to help teachers deal with the cognitive. I try to help teachers deal with the tests. Be an advocate, not an aggressor. Be someone who is an education leader, not a politician. You know what? I've seen you do it. I've seen you do it at the charter board. Show people how human you are. That's my recommendation. Take it with you.
My name is Diane. I currently serve as the president of the Scottsdale Unified School District. I'd like to welcome you to our fine facility here and welcome the audience and thank everybody for their interest. I don't think there's anybody here, well, almost nobody that I disagree with. Mostly what I would like to ask you tonight is to be an advocate, the same thing as the previous gentleman talked about. As a governing board member, I think that my biggest role is an advocate for all of the students and recognizing the different needs of the students and the different needs of our teachers too. I'd like to ask if we need to advocate for stability. We need stability in funding. We need stability in legislation. It's very hard for governing board members and administrators to make decisions and do long-term planning when things change sometimes from hour to hour at the legislature. You know, you have a different role in that, but you can advocate for us. And sometimes just to advocate do no harm. One of the things that our superintendent here in Scottsdale says is that in the case of funding for our kids and for our teachers, we'd love to be just average. We'll make sure that we give you our full 100% of dedication and talent, no matter what we have or what we're given. But when it comes to the funding, if we could be average, we could be any state out there. We could be ahead of average in funding. We could be ahead of many of the other states. Just one of the things that I know you're doing that I'm very excited about is looking at reducing administrative burden. And just this week I signed 7 different applications, grants for repairs to our school. And this is an amount that we used to get under the State Facilities Board. And we used to get soft capital, and those two for texts and instructional materials. Those 2 items were combined into something called district additional assistance, but actually the total has been cut by 85% next year. But by next year, it will be cut by 85%. So the textbook, instructional materials, the repairs that we have to do on the schools, and some of our elementary schools are around 50 years old, have to come out of the classroom. We don't want to do that. As governing board member, when I first got on the board, I did not know that I would be cutting 7 years in a row and from our budget of the 7 years that I've been on here. So I just, for the grants, I wanted to tell you, I had to sign a 7-page grant for $1,275 in repairs. We might get it, we might not. But that's one of the administrative things. But somebody had to fill all of that out where that was money that we used to get in the account. So if you could help us with that, that would be great because we couldn't put that administrative effort, the money that goes to the administrative effort in order to apply for grants, we can put that back into the classroom. So thank you for your service. Thank you, all of you teachers and parents who care about public education for being here this evening.
One additional card, Kathy Fishman. I don't know if Kathy is still here, but she's listed some questions that will come forward. So go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I'm Katie Hawes. I'm a parent of a junior high and high school student in Phoenix. I'm also the state senator from District 24, which stretches from Central Phoenix down here to South Scottsdale, and I'm the Senate minority leader. I want to thank you, Superintendent Douglas, for your willingness to engage with the community and hear our concerns. If we're to address the future viability of our K-12 education system, we must begin to make education a top priority of the state. And I know many of my colleagues in the legislature will argue that we are, and I vehemently disagree. While money is not the only hurdle to overcome, it certainly is a big one. Arizona ranked dead last in school funding in the recently released National Education Association rankings. Additionally, across all education metrics, Arizona ranked 47th nationally with a grade of D+ in the latest Quality Health Survey. The legislature should cease the ideologically driven effort to disadvantage school districts and begin to strategically invest in initiatives that will move the needle for all of our students. It's not that we as a state don't know what to do, it's only that we refuse to fund and support that effort. It's long past time that the governor, the majority leadership, and both chambers of the legislature put the partisan government aside and start working with all legislators and stakeholders to prioritize the programs that will begin to move the state's K-12 education system forward. I have a list of several issues that need to be addressed. I know some of them have been touched on, so I'm going to try not to be repetitive. First is the teacher recruitment and retention crisis. Nationally, 46% of starting teachers leave the profession within 5 years, but in Arizona, we have a much greater crisis, with 24% of teachers leaving after the first year, an additional 20 leaving after year 2. Salary is a major contributing factor in this crisis. Arizona ranks 42nd nationally in average teacher salary at $47,600 and has an average starting salary of just $31,874. The teacher crisis imposes enormous educational and financial burdens on our public schools, with the Department of Education estimating that it costs on average $13,000 to attract and train each new teacher. Second is classroom technology and statewide broadband access. Arizona finds itself way behind almost every other state in ensuring that all of our schools have access to high-speed broadband internet services, and the associated classroom technology is essential to educate 21st century learners. We live in an increasingly connected, technology-driven world. Depriving our students of access to this technology in the educational setting has real-world impacts in terms of the students' ability to get access to new jobs being created by our growing economy. Third is third-grade reading intervention and middle school pathways programs. The Move On with Reading program has made a significant impact, reducing the number of children reading at the falls far below category of the third-grade reading assessment. However, most of these students are merely moving up to the approaching cohort and thus still not reading at grade level. There's a stark correlation between reading at grade level of the third grade and future success in school and the workforce. It's essential that we stay on the path to improvement in this effort, and we double down on strategies to allow all of our students reading at grade level in the third grade. While we're seeing some progress on the early literacy front, we have another major issue that we'll need to address if we're going to see substantive improvement in educational outcomes, namely creating a middle school pathways program that assures every student early in their middle school years to give them a sense of where their aptitude, that assesses every student early in their middle school years to give them a sense of where their aptitude lies and that lays out a clear path for success in high school. As students move into the middle school years, their access to many of their neighborhoods' destructive social influence decreases, and too many make bad choices and end up on the path to dropping out and see their chance at a better life schooling. If we could refocus our students early in their middle school years and work with them to understand that there's a clear path forward to success in high school, higher education, and a productive career that contributes to their community, we would not only have better success in attracting the kind of economic development that will move our state forward, we can begin to address the cycle of poverty and despair that is often prevalent in our state. Fourth is JTED and CTE program growth and improvement. The recently enacted FY16 budget included a provision that would reduce JTED and school district medium funding for students attending a satellite JTED by 7.5% starting in FY17. This is exactly the wrong direction. We should be enhancing all manner of JTED and district-based career and technical education programming to give our students that are not headed for higher education a career pathway that can lead to a good job. Students enrolled in JTED and CTE programs have among the highest high school completion rates of any cohort of students. These programs are an essential tool to allow students to pursue a variety of career options and remain engaged in getting a good education. Fifth, I think I'm on fifth, school facilities construction and maintenance. As a result of the settlement of the long contentious Roosevelt versus Bishop School Capital Finance case in the late 80s, state created the School Facilities Board, appropriated millions of dollars to bring schools statewide to a minimum adequacy standard, and established the building renewal formula and statute. Beginning in 2008, the legislature began suspending the appropriations to the formula and ultimately eliminated the formula from statute entirely. The legislature's unwillingness to fund both new school construction and building renewal will soon result in a lawsuit to reopen the Roosevelt v. Bishop case. The courts are not the ideal venue to set public policy, so the legislature should do its job and return to funding the new school facility needs of the state. School districts are forced to raise precious M&O funds for desperately needed repairs or write grants applications, as we just heard, to repair their facilities, which means those funds can't be used in the classroom to educate our children. And finally, solutions teams. We must have a better effort to assist struggling school districts, and we have the plan already in statute. ARS 15241 calls for solution teams to assist schools with a letter grade of D or F to improve academic achievement and operational efficiencies. The Department of Education annually requests approximately $5 million to fund these teams, and annually the request is not included in the executive budget proposal. Our focus should be on strong neighborhood schools in all communities, and solutions teams are a valuable tool along the path to improvement for our serving schools. Thank you.
No, I didn't. I'm sorry. Come on forward. I didn't see you. Absolutely. Hi, my name is Kathy Fishman, and I'm a licensed social worker in the state of Illinois. I've lived in a number of states, moved here a couple of years, 2 years ago, and started to find out that Arizona was 49th or 50th on routine school funding, and I think that's really, it's really shameful. I have been tutoring kids in a Title I school for the last couple of years in reading, and it's amazing to see the progress they've made over those couple of years. But I'm amazed at what they have to deal with on a daily basis at home and in school, the anxiety that goes with preparing for tests and taking tests. And I heard this week that teacher salaries are dependent on the results of this one test at the end of the year, 15 to 30% of their salaries. And what amazes me is that teachers, so many tonight, are so highly motivated and so dedicated to this. And I really, I just can't imagine why I want to teach. It's a terrible environment to be teaching in. And the kids deserve better. And really what I'd like to see is to remove some of the obstacles for both the teachers and the kids. There's so much that could be done. There's so many people who are dedicated to doing it. I just can't imagine why we make the process so hard. And I think that you're in a fabulous position to do something about that. I have a son I have 2 kids who are both graduated from college, and one just returned from 4 years teaching English in Korea, which is an entirely different educational system. And when I told him I was coming tonight, he said to ask you one question. I know that you won't be responding, but I think it's worth thinking about. And it's when kids in Arizona are going to school 4 days a week, how are they going to do it? And how are they going to compete with kids who are going to school 6 days a week year round? And I think it's really something. There's so
much critical thinking that needs to be done, so much education, and I think that we fund what we value. And that's really where I like to. And the comments really, we fund what we value. And this is so. I want to thank you all for coming this evening. I'm always remiss, I always forget to do something in the opening comments. And this evening, what I forgot to do was to introduce elected officials who are here, and we heard from several governing board members and said, would you please stand up and be recognized if you're still in the audience? I apologize that I didn't do that right at the beginning. One thing I'd like to share that happened to me as I close, that happened to me when I became a member of the Peoria School Board was I went out and I toured all our schools, and I remember one principal in particular of our alternative high school. He came up to me and he literally wagged his finger in my face and he said, young lady, I want you to remember one thing. One size fits one. And I think that's what we're hearing a lot in all the tour stops that I've been making. And clearly, keeping our children first, and to the person who commented to that, yes, I do. And that's what I tell staff every day. That if we keep the children first, the work that we do will be blessed. We know that the work that you do is blessed. I thank the teachers who came here this evening. I know you have a lot on your plates, and to take your time out to do this, I very much appreciate it. One thing I would like to ask, clearly we've told you you can give feedback on the reports you did tonight. You can go on the AACE website. I do have one particular request for any of you that have been involved with the AACE merit testing directly. We heard some stories and testimonies here tonight about what our students are going through. And I would like to very much hear personally from you about what you're observing, what's happening in the testing environment. And you can do that by contacting me at Diane.Douglas, Diane has one N, Douglas has one S, at azed.gov. I've been struggling with how to get a good representation of what our children are being subjected to in this testing environment. So any of you who have feedback, please, I'd love to hear it. I thank you again for coming this evening, and I remind you that we'll be back in the fall to give you feedback on all that you've given to us this evening. Please be safe going home. Thank you for all you do, and God bless.
Thank you.
Chandler is nurse, as I understand. The spot in that location, I assume it's a big building. Copper Room, okay. Okay, all right. So I'll just look for that. Well, and that's special. Okay. Yeah, I'll just plan to be there early, so see you then. Oh, I'm sorry.